everybody. Welcome back to The Gray Maybe. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is the first time you're tuning in, welcome, welcome. If you are a repeat listener, thank you so much for continuing to tune in. And also, if you're new, I hope you would consider listening to some of the other episodes in the other two seasons as well as this season. Today, I have a very good friend of mine, and I say that a lot. I say all the people I bring on are friends of mine, but this is someone who was originally one of my main mentors when I first moved to Los Angeles. She was one of my main teachers. She taught me a lot about dancing, a lot about the industry, and I watched her as a sort of model in the industry and got to hear a lot of her background and her expertise in dance and assisting choreographers and choreography. She is also a veteran dancer. She's been in some pretty big projects. I always tell her projects. I always should shout them out. She's cringing right now, but she was in Baby Got Back, the music video, which I'm sure she's like, it's whatever. But that was that's a big deal to me growing up. I loved that song. It was a cultural icon. She is in that video. She is in Rhythm Nation, that music video. And those are just a very small portion of the work and body of work she did as a dancer and as an assistant choreographer and as a choreographer. So I just like to highlight those. But she was all over the industry, tours, TV, film, very well versed in all of it. And she has become such a very close, dear friend of mine. I would like to welcome Terry, aka Terrence, aka Terry Yates, to the Gray Maybe podcast.
Hello.
That's right. That's our hello. You were ready for it. I didn't. You
was.
warned me, but I wasn't ready.
I was
Yes.
ready.
Yes. Yeah. I love it.
It came to me literally just seconds ago before.
Oh, good. So it's authentic.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add to that intro?
That I'm a badass realtor also.
That's right. I didn't even talk about like the other things you've done. Like you have been a caretaker. Yes. You're a teacher. You are you're a real estate agent. You have been a caretaker. You're very involved in community things. You have quite a few communities that you're very active in. You are a very well-rounded person. I'll say that. That's for damn sure. Anything else that you want the peoples to know?
No, I think they'll get to hear it all through our talk,
Yes, the interrogation.
I'm very passionate about what I say, but my mind can be changed. That's what I like to say.
Yes, that's true. It's the interrogation.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay. So now, because I know you, because we've been close, this season on the podcast, we're talking about grief. And I had a front row seat watching you caretake your mother, who was very ill with cancer for a number of years and fought hard, and was a diamond through the whole process. I have no idea how.
Yeah.
And you were her full-time caretaker for a number of years. And I had to watch from the wings, the theoretical wings. You have to walk your way through this incredible grief. And, a lot of people on the podcast I have talked about losing a parent. Mm-hmm. For me, when I think of you and your mom, I don't think of your mom as your parent. I think of her as so much more of like someone so much closer to you than a parent. And I know people are like, well, what could be closer to a parent? Like a friend, sister, parent. Like you and your mom had a relationship that I don't know a lot of people that have that kind of relationship with their parents. So when she talks about this today, like I need everybody to know who's listening that Sandra, your mother, was so much more to you than just a maternal figure. And that's Absolutely. What was so painful watching you go through this, because it was so much more than just losing a parent. So with that being said, and you can talk about, you don't have to get deep into the experience of your mom. If you want to tell that journey, you can. If you just want to speak about grief in general, we're whatever is convenient and comfortable here. But I will yield the floor to you and give us a little background on that.
Yes, she was more than just my mother. She was this amazing light and just an amazing example of how to live life And so I think this journey, what's unique to me about my journey is that when I was a young girl, my mother tried to commit suicide. And so I don't even know if you and I have had this talk. So
I don't know. I know a lot about your mom. I know she experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of different types of trauma. You and your sisters, I'm not going to get into what you'll say or not say, but you guys also growing up have experienced quite a lot of trauma. I don't know a lot of families that stuck together like you guys did, and like the relationships. I think that's very uncommon, given all the things you guys went through, but I don't know if I knew that specifically.
Yeah. She was really young when she had me. She was 16 when she had me. So that meant she was pregnant while she was 15. So that meant, and her mom died when she was 9. So my mother really believed that if you kissed a boy, you could get pregnant. That's how naive and she was. And even keeping me was like, the pastor at the church wanted her to give me up, and this family can't have kids and they'll send you to schools, and she was training to be a concert pianist. So, but she said, no, this is my baby. And so, by the time she was 26, she had 5 kids and 4 different dads. And the second one after me, that dad beat her, took her from my mom with a gun pointed to my head. This might be a little much for your listeners already, but
we'll give some trigger warnings.
Sorry. So there was the abuse that went on, and just before the healthiness took place, a lot of unhealthiness took place, but there was always love. There was always the amazing amount of love that she had for us, and she fought hard. She fought hard to keep us. She fought hard. So anyway, at one point she tried to kill herself, and I remember standing in the shower with her, and I don't even remember, was 911 even around back then? I'm like, when did 911 start?
I remember the campaign for 911 being pretty heavy in the 80s.
Yeah,
but
so
like in the mid to late 80s. So
Yeah, no.
like every kid knew, like there were like PSAs and the more you know on TV, like call 911, but I don't know.
I don't know how I knew to call to get help for her. I don't know how I managed.
Maybe it was
to
like
do
operator or something. Do you think it
Yeah,
was like the operator or the
maybe.
pound key or something?
Girl, look,
I don't know.
my brain, there are things I think I block. Anyway, memory goes, no, I don't think so. So, but anyway, my whole point about this is that I was standing, they came and we went to the hospital. And back then it was like those swinging doors, right, that you go in and out of, and they had these little portholes, like windows that you could see through. And I was on my tiptoes. It was that high up. I was on my tiptoes watching them work on her. And my mother died on that table. And people can believe or whatever they want, but she says that she was leaving her body. And she looked over and saw my face in that window and came back. And she said, like, whoever it was like, it's too soon. You have to go back. And she saw me and she came back. I say this story because that trauma, unbeknownst to me, stayed with me forever, like for my entire life, like up until I'm much better now. But as I grew, there was this part of me that was always afraid of her dying. So when she became ill, and you hear cancer and you flip out a little and then you try not to, I think it triggered me again. And as I cared for her, every year she would say, I'm not getting better. And I go, but this is better and this is better. I tried to be, I don't think it's Pollyanna. I just tried to be really encouraging. And, but she was right. And the leukemia, she had a very rare leukemia. And they said that this won't kill you, but most likely the symptoms that the side effects that come about from having it will be what kills you.
Mm-hmm.
So we really cared for her, like all day long. I cared for her, and in the evening, someone would tag team me. My dad most of the time, or my sister would come. Um, but I had the flexibility to be that person. And at one point, I ended up moving in with her, um, into the house to care for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, that was a whole thing in and of itself.
You really gave up your life to take care of her. There was, I met you as a professional dancer who was later in your career looking to possibly transition, not fully out of dance. Dance has always
Right.
been a part of your life, but you were starting real estate. You were, I think you worked at an office even. Like I remember you coming from the office to come teach or
No, I
something.
did. I was a I assisted two loan officers first.
Okay, so that happened
That
first before.
happened
Okay,
first. That
yes, so I
nightmare.
remember you coming from the office to come
Uh-huh.
teach when I was training. And then, then there was like this chunk of time where you were just helping your mom, and unless it fit within your mom's schedule of office visits and, watching her and helping her and making sure she was safe, like it wasn't happening. There were dance opportunities you were not doing. There were job opportunities that got turned down. There was this whole chunk of time where that was your job. That's what you did. And I remember that time. And that was probably were you full-time caretaking before you moved into the house, or was that kind of like that happened at the same time?
No. It all kind of it, it was a grinding halt. It like didn't happen
Hmm.
all at once. And because I also had in my Buddhist community, I had a huge responsibility. So I was literally driving. So this is before she needed someone at the house full time. I
Hmm.
would drive, to her, take care of her, and then drive even further, maybe to Westlake or Thousand Oaks or wherever I had to go because to care for, to go and to a meeting or to see members or chant with somebody. So all of that happened. Um, and then, I was trying to do real estate in the meantime, between time. And, and it literally, and it's kind of hard to say, like the universe was just like, I need you just to care for your mom now.
Hmm.
And things stopped. I even the last deal I had was like the worst deal ever. Before I came, like before I had to take a break from real estate, even because it was the banking system. They were trying to close down on people. It was just a nightmare. So it was like nightmares after night on top of nightmares. And she was good for a while. She really
Hmm.
was like, but the problem was that she was on really heavy duty narcotic pain medication, so she couldn't drive. And that was, a really sensible choice by her. And so part of all of this grieving started from almost from that moment. From the moment that you hear those words, I have this rare leukemia. And then for a minute, I didn't equate that with cancer,
Right.
but it's a blood cancer. And so um, I think as I look back, that's when I started grieving,
And
honestly.
we've talked a little bit with some of my guests on this season. There's this idea of anticipatory grief has come up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And as like, so definitely from that diagnosis, there's that anticipatory grief, right? Like that fear of the worst outcome, and you're anticipating that thing, right? Or it getting worse, and like the anxiety surrounding that. And I'm wondering if too, like you talking about this traumatic experience of seeing your mom die and come back at such a young age, if that anxiety around that wasn't always that anticipatory grief, like you saw it happen once, like what's keeping it from happening again in a way, and like
Oh,
that kind of
absolutely.
just every day kind of, is the other shoe going to drop?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think that I consciously thought that because
No.
she became, she found the love of her life, became very happy, healed so many things, and just was this powerhouse woman. Like, she started businesses, she was rehabbing houses. I mean, like, she was a badass. She was running things. So I wasn't really thinking, oh, she's going to die any minute now. That wasn't there. But what happened was I was triggered again back to that moment when she became ill and was diagnosed. That's when the trigger hit. I didn't, we had fun. We laughed and traveled, and, she was my best friend. We did everything together. That woman, there is not one thing that has happened to me that she didn't know about. She held all my secrets, all my dreams.
I'm always everything. So shocked at the conversations you guys had, because I am on the opposite spectrum of that mother-daughter relationship. Like, my mom and I the things that you have said, the words you've said in front of your mother, the conversations you've had, I would never. And I am I spent, listen, my mom is constantly kind of embarrassed by the things I say, but like, you guys had a whole, like, next level. You guys were very open with each other. It was so cool. It was so cool. That's all I gotta say about that. But it was shocking from someone who just doesn't have that and has never really seen that kind of open and honesty. But yes. Okay. So that anticipatory grief hit hard when you got that diagnosis.
Yeah, it did. And I don't think that, and it wasn't a conscious, registering of that information, that I didn't consciously register that. In my being, I think I did. And part of it was, I didn't want to lose her.
Of course.
Period. Point blank. I couldn't imagine. And I think I said it to you on one or two occasions. I said, I can't imagine my life without her. And, I didn't want to imagine my life without her. We're in year 5 now of having lost her. And there's a whole story that you haven't even heard yet of how much I have transformed this grief. But people, like months later, one of my other besties, her mom died. And so because I had just gone through it months earlier, I was like, we can't leave her alone. We got to go. So we got on a plane and flew to Houston, and then drove 3 hours to Kingville to be at her mother's funeral. She had no idea we were coming, because I had just gone through it. And I also, once my mom died, the grieving happens in some of the most uncomfortable and opportune moments, as I sit in the middle of Color Purple and just start sobbing. At near the end of this show, my mother loved Color Purple. My entire family can recite every line to Color Purple. I cannot. But they can. And so I'm just sobbing in the middle of this. And then I remember at one point just getting on a plane, and I call it my runaway tour. I got on a plane and flew to Maryland to stay with a friend, went into DC, saw things, blah, 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 blah. And then got on a train and went to New York and went to shows and just hung out. And then I came home, and grief was just sitting there on the porch going, hey, girl, how you doing? I know you ran, but we still here.
Right. I just wait for you. I'll just wait for you.
Just waiting for you. I know it was my runaway tour did jack diddly for me just
a cigarette on the front porch.
Right. How you doing? How'd that happen? And all it said was, nice job you did on your credit card there.
Oh, yeah. So now you have Grief Plus.
Grief Plus, that credit card going, yeah, about that.
Yeah.
but it didn't matter. I just was trying to run. I just needed to get away from what I thought I was getting away from. But when that, I think there's a saying, grief, is a journey.
Hmm.
And if it's not, it should be, because it is. It is a journey, and it's not a straight line, and the peaks and valleys are some of the deepest valleys that I've ever experienced in my life. I had to go to therapy after a year of thinking I could handle it. I went to therapy, and every time I went in, the knot in my throat, which burned literally, because I couldn't stop crying. I just, from the depths of my soul, I could not stop crying. And I felt like I wished I had gone, and I encourage people to do this. I wish I had gone to one of those rooms where you throw shit.
Oh yeah, the rage rooms or
The
whatever
rage
they're
rooms.
called. Yeah.
Really, whatever they're called. Wish I had done that. Wish I had gone and thrown, because in there you can scream, you can cry, you can break stuff, because I was so broken, and I didn't know how to function. I didn't know how to. I was with you. We were at Pineapple Saloon. How many times? Like, as a couple of times, I think I just broke down and cried.
Oh, all the time. And I had no idea what to do. So I would just sit there and watch you. And I was like, fuck, I wish I could like make this better. Which is like what everybody, that's what is so funky about it. Is like nobody knows what to do. Nobody knows what to say. And most people are going to say the wrong thing, because there's never really a good thing to say. Even though everybody wants something to say, they feel like they need to say something. And everyone's so individual in what they want to hear or don't hear. Right. So that's really hard too. And it's really, if you're empathetic at all as a person, it's really hard to watch someone suffer. It's just so hard.
Yeah. And here's the interesting thing. I felt there's two sides to that. I felt safe with you. And I even think Stefan was there once.
Yeah, he was there a couple times.
Yeah. I felt safe with you. And then I felt bad, because I knew you felt bad.
See, so I
yeah, I'm just saying, I know, because people, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do. And when people would say, I'm so sorry, I'm like, yeah, me too. And I know people, like, it's not politically correct, probably. I'm like, yeah, I'm really sorry too.
No, I think that's real. I think that's real. And there's something, no, sorry, go on.
No. I don't say I'm sorry. I honestly don't say that to people. Like, I've started my own book of what to say and what not to say when someone dies.
Ooh, we need that book. We need that book. Society needs that book.
People just just wrong. And then it's kind of like when someone has cancer, though. Everyone thinks they have the cure, or you need to try this.
Right. Oh, yes. All of a sudden, everybody.
Stop.
Yeah, yes. Everybody is an expert all of a sudden, because I know this one person who did this one thing and now they're fine.
Right.
Or they read an article, or they would. And it's like, that is the same thing as not knowing what to say. Is in that moment of feeling helpless and anxious, you want to offer a solution.
Right.
And this is what I've learned about myself in going into recovery rooms, where the rules are really strict about what you're allowed to do and say, like how long you're allowed to share. And you're not allowed to give feedback. You're not allowed to comment on what someone says. You're not allowed to offer advice. At best you could say, would you like a suggestion? And even then, that's at the end after the meet. That's not while it's going on. So you have to just learn how to sit and listen and not offer all those things. So if you, as a person who's like, I never know how to act in these situations, let me tell you right now, don't offer a solution. Don't offer your advice unless it's asked for. Just sit there and hold space for that person.
Right.
And just sit and hold space. That's all you can really do. And that's the best way of not pissing anyone off. I'll tell you that right now. Like, that's all I know. And I wish I was I was not in this process. Like, I was not this far along in my process when you were going through that. I was really ill-equipped. Like, I wish I had the skill set I have now, or I could have tried to use that skill set more then that I have now. Although who knows, maybe I think I'm way better off than I actually am. I'm sitting here like I'm so much better now. Probably not. But but yeah, the cancer diagnosis stuff, all of a sudden everybody's got a fucking cure, and it's insulting. It's insulting, it's not helpful, and it's enraging, and it's hard, and it makes it all harder, and it's so hard for people to avoid doing.
Well, I was lucky, if you can call it that, that my mother had a very rare diagnosis.
Right.
So I didn't have to field as much of that as people like to do with breast cancer, say.
Right.
You know, um, you know, the old standbys. So everybody had like, I didn't have that. I learned a lot through this process. I learned, and what's the word I'm looking for? I shifted my grief to
Transformed or
to other things that could help me. I got better at things. I became a really good advocate. I became really great as a caregiver. And as an advocate and in encouraging people on advocacy. I learned, about organizations that help people with cancer, and I involved myself with those people. I ran a marathon. Okay, I'm sorry.
Every year, you still do it?
No. I walked a marathon. No.
Right.
Marathon, a real marathon, not that thing that like.
Oh,
that little,
this is different. Okay.
walk.
Okay.
That walk
Yes.
is a.
Yeah. She does it every year, but this is in addition to.
Totally. I did the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society has a marathon that you can do, and I did the half marathon. Let's be clear.
You cray.
Full marathon. I was like those people, and and I'm not I said I'm a halfer for life, and then I'm just going to be like, let's be real. I never want to do this again. 13 miles, 13 point whatever miles of. But it helped me. It helped me put my energy somewhere. There's a word I'm looking for. I can't think about it. I can't find it. But
transcended?
Anyway,
Transcend?
No.
Transform?
It just helped me put my energy somewhere, navigate this process. I was able to utilize my lack of control. So I was able to do things that helped me in control and in honor of my mother. So I ran the marathon, and I did the marathon in honor of my mother. And my sister did it with me. My one sister did it with me. And yeah, I don't think we'll ever, we will never do it again. But it was an amazing experience nonetheless. And my mother was honored that we did it for her. She was those things made her feel seen. And so, so it really was helpful in that way. It was a journey, because the grief part of it is that she didn't just get cancer. All of us got it. And so because of that, we all had to learn to navigate the diagnosis and what it meant to us, and how can I help?
Yeah.
Because I'm just sitting here. So now I want to become that girl, and then when I realized I wasn't that good at that, then I created the shows, the benefits that we did to raise money for organizations that help people with cancer. And I think that all of that is part of the process.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is what helped you through your process was kind of and being able to mediate that lack of control, the powerlessness that comes with losing someone or someone having this long debilitating illness, is the ability to do things, right, that have some kind of a deep meaning. You were very involved in these cancer organizations. Which was the one that we did? We Spark. We did for We Spark and Living Beauty. Those were the two that supported her the most in her journey. And they, support the whole family. And that's who I walk for every year. I do that walk every year. They've now just put me on the t-shirt because I'm so late when it comes time But they know you're going to be
signing up.
there.
But
Yeah.
they know, no, they know I'm going to raise enough money.
Oh
So
yeah.
now
Yeah.
they just put, yeah, you only get it on the t-shirt if you raise enough money. So they just immediately put us on the
I
t-shirt.
love it.
They're like,
I love it.
we know you're going to raise enough money. Like, I'm like, I know I probably could raise more if I was a little more on it before it happens.
No, but you do a good job. And WeSpark also has a lot of like support groups and stuff like that. We'll link in the show notes these orgs. Terry has always been really outspoken about getting the kind of support anytime we hear anyone around us has cancer has been diagnosed. That is one thing that you've been very proactive about as far as not advice or suggestion, but hey, do you know about this? Because I think the one thing that separates you from other people that have gone through crippling grief is that you are so community oriented, and it's not by mistake. It's not that you're just like, I don't know if that's a natural inherent trait of yours, like maybe it is, but I think that is something that is the cure to everything that you have dis-ease around is community, and you have that in your religion, you have that in these cancer orgs. So you are very pro community, and I am also very pro community, although I am not, when I'm in my depths, the last thing I want to do is community, but that is the first thing I should be doing. And I say that for anybody else who might not come to community right off the bat. If you're someone who, when things get shitty, go to isolation, the contrary action is always going to be community. They say the opposite of addiction is connection, which is also community. So the thing that I've always known about you is you refuse to suffer alone. And I think that is like something people really can choose to embrace. You don't have to suffer alone. You may not get to choose if you have to suffer or not. Like, you may not get to choose the circumstances and the situations, but you do not have to do it alone. And when people say that, I'm sure someone like me gets that like hair up the back of their neck. Like, I don't want to tell people my business. And it's like, no. But you just got to tell the right people your business.
Right.
Like, you might not get the support from everybody else who doesn't have someone who's already gone through or is currently going through cancer, but you could go to WeSpark in their support groups, and everyone there is knows exactly what's good. It may not be the exact same thing. They may be dealing with different things, but everyone is there because those are your people in that moment. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like, I don't want to belong to that group, but you already do. So you might as well get the perks. Yeah. I would love for you to talk a little bit about, I didn't put this on the question list, so here's a surprise one. So one thing, and I'll backtrack. So recently with my father's passing, I flew into town at the 8th hour, like things were going bad. He was sick for many years. I flew in, and I got to see him before we drugged him up, and that was my calling. I was very passionate about him being very comfortable. And for those of you who may not know, nurses are not going to just give them comfort drugs. You have to ask for that, especially if your loved one or person you're caring for cannot advocate for themselves, which was my dad. He was nonverbal for the last few years he was alive. So he could not tell us if he was in pain or not. So we were the people who had to decide that for him. And nurses will look for certain subtle clues, or not so subtle, like rising blood pressure. But by that time, they could be really suffering. So I flew in, I got to see him, he saw me, and then I was like, lights out, let's get this going. And I was so forceful, politely forced when I needed to be, and then not polite when I didn't need to, when it was no longer necessary. And I got everything I wanted, and I made things happen that would not have happened without me being there, but they especially would not have happened had I not listened to your experience and how much of an advocate you were for your mom when she was sick. So not only were you a caretaker, but there's a whole way that you advocated for her within the medical system that I think is unique because of how much you had to deal with it and what you realized that needed to happen and didn't need, and what you could say and what you couldn't say. And really, there's nothing you couldn't say. Let's just break it down. Like,
right.
And I want you to talk a little bit, like, if you could tell people out, like give an abbreviated version of what you've given me over the years. Try to do that. But like, you know, a little bit about it, because this is the
Yeah.
thing. Like, I wouldn't have known to do that. I would have wanted to maybe, or maybe because I didn't see the example, I didn't hear the words. There are certain things that through your experience, I picked up on and just grabbed onto and was like, all right, it's Terry time, motherfuckers. Like, what would Terry do? You know, like that was kind of the deal. And it made all the difference. It made all the difference in everything that happened. So, you know, for people who ever are in this situation, and I hate to
Right.
break it to those of you who are listening, it's probably going to happen at some point. So,
Yes.
unfortunately, like just throw this in the back of your head for emergency, because it will bring you some peace. It will bring you some peace in moments that you need peace. You will have that because you're like, oh, I fought hard. I got them what they need. I know that they were not paying. I know I got my, you know, any little bit of peace that you can find in these moments is good peace. So after I will stop talking so you can actually comment, what do you want to tell people about that?
Well, here's the thing. Everything I learned how to care for a human being came from my mother, first of all. But I used to feel bad that I wasn't more like her
Hmm.
because she was so like when somebody thinks of Mother Earth, that was my mom. And there was an edge to me that did not allow me to be that girl. But I realized that that girl is who I needed to be in order to care for her. So I was able to come to terms with it. My mother never spent the night in the hospital by herself. Never. It was either me or my dad, and maybe once or twice my sister, but my mother never slept by herself. Whether I was in a chair, whether I had them bring in a bed, whatever, my mother never spent the night by herself. And so that was first. And I also would not allow them to check on her every frigging hour while she was trying to rest. Hospital's not a place to rest. Let's
Mhm.
be clear. So I got to the point where I'd be like, hi, I need you to put a note on the door that no one can come back in until 6 a.m. I'm in here. If
Yeah,
something
unless
goes
I come
wrong,
and get you, don't worry about
I
it.
don't need, she's good. I'm here. And most nurses are really good about that
Mhm.
because they need help. There's like
Yeah,
so many
they have other
people,
things to do.
they have so much to do. And I'm like,
They're like, thank God you're on the clock right now.
right. And I will be the first to say, if I don't know what I'm like, I don't do anything like, I didn't try and do their job. I just was able to be there. She needed ice. I could go get her ice. She needed to go to the bathroom. I could help take her to the bathroom. There were things that I could do that if she was calling for them, who knows when they would get there. So that was first of all. And so I learned to, that even there were times my dad would take her and I would call me. I would be on the phone. Even now, if my dad has to go and I can't go with him to the doctor, I ask for him to call, bring me in on the call when the doctor comes in. Never listen, never go to the doctor by yourself. Never let someone go by themselves. They can't hear anything. They can't hear everything. It's too emotional. And if you're emotional, break out your phone and record them. I took notes. We had a notebook that we knew what was being said, what was being done. What medication was happening. Here's what she's doing. Here's what's going on. As someone as advocating for someone, I knew when the doctors were coming in, so I would make sure I was there. We were all there if we could be, so I think that I've had some testy moments with doctors. We had 2 oncologists, and they were brilliant men, but they were fighting. And I basically said, because one's like, he's not calling me back. I said, guys, I don't care whose dick is bigger. I need
Mhm.
you to get along because my mother is the point here.
Please tell me you said that.
I did.
You said Dick.
Oh, I did.
Oh my God, I love you so
I
much.
absolutely did. And and one doctor, her neurologist, if I knew what the things I know now, but her neurologist would literally put me to sleep. I'd just be in his office, just like trying to stay awake. And he says to her, okay, I'll see you in 30 days and see if there's any difference. I'm like, I look up. I'm like, excuse me? what more do you need in 30 days? She's fallen. She's da 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 da. I'm like, I'm running the litany of things.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the day that man became part of our team. Because I was like, I lost my mind. I wasn't loud. I was very succinct, and like, these are her issues. But I overheard the nurses saying that this is what they do. They put you off for 30 days
mm-hmm.
because they've got a rotation of
mm-hmm.
patients that they have to see. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, my mother is not that rotation. She's not going to be in that rotation for you. She needs care now. And my mother was septic. He called on a Saturday. I need you to get your mom to the emergency room right now. Her blood workers come back. She's septic.
Mm.
But before that, I got nothing. Like, I had to, like, and then I just found a way to just, we pulled these people together and we made them realize she was a human being, that she was not a patient.
Mm-hmm.
She was a human being. And that's what she wanted to be seen as. And it's what she said. I'm
Right.
not a patient. I'm not a sick person. I'm a
Right.
human being that needs care.
Right.
And so anyway.
Yes. And I don't know if I got the nurses and the social workers who were in charge of trying to get my dad out of palliative care in the hospital into hospice. I don't know if I got them to think of him as a human being, but what I did get them was to want to avoid me and get me out of their face as soon as possible.
Yes.
And I was fine with that. I didn't need them, because I was on the finish line. My dad was going to pass. It wasn't like, this wasn't an ongoing thing. He had been deteriorating for a long time. And this was kind of like, we were hoping he would pass soon and not, fast. We didn't want this to be him to be in any more discomfort than necessary. And so when I was speaking to these people, I was really sweet to the nurses, very, very sweet. But they kept hearing from me. So I kept going up to their station. Hi, can you do this? Hi, can you check this? Hi, can you move him this? Hi, can you add this? Hi, if this was your loved one, how much more pain meds do you think hi, if he wakes up in the night, how are you going to know he's in pain? Can we already discuss what that's going to be? Can you just put him on a regimen? And all these questions, like my mom and my dad are watching, or my mom and my dad was probably watching too. My mom and my brother, because this is how my dad was though.
Right.
See, my dad was like this in an uncomfortable way.
Mm-hmm.
When my mom went to the hospital for severe, I don't know if she had a colitis attack or a food poisoning, something. It was bad. It couldn't go either way. And she was in excruciating pain. They brought her to the emergency room. They weren't doing anything. And my dad called 911 from the hospital.
Okay.
And he said, I need help. Wow. I'm at the hospital and they will not help me. I need help for my wife. She is suffering. They gave her morphine. They did give her morphine. She was in so much pain. So that's my dad. So now, and I can guarantee you he was not calm, cool, and collected on that 911 call. I guarantee you the 90% of that call was language that is not appropriate. So like I am a calm, cool, I'm a little bit calmer and cooler in those moments. But so my mom and my brother are watching me like I'm an alien because they would not have advocated in this way because they're assuming that these nurses are just going to do that. Right. And I'm like, hell no. I want to make sure that they know exactly what that is. And I was such a squeaky wheel with the social workers, with these companies, and with this thing. I was like 8 a.m. I'm calling every 10 minutes, page them again. Oh, I would. And then I would get, this is like next level, but whatever information I got from the nurses, I took that information. Then I was throwing people under the bus left and right people who are, I got more information from him than the social worker. And she said she was going to tell me, why does the nurse know more than the social worker? Like, I was just like, boom, boom, throwing people in front of the bus, did not care. And, part of that's from you. So look at Terry, look at what good work you've done in the world. No, but I was very sweet to the nurses.
Yes.
And we
absolutely.
were always very sweet through the stress and the sadness to anyone until things were not moving in the way that they should. And until they are treating you like a number or like a patient or like a sick or and then that was where everything changed. Everything changed. My tone changed. And if you're listening, please, 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 please listen to what she's saying. Number one, don't go and get any health information without someone with you, or at least record it or have someone else on the phone. Right. Number one. Number one. Number two, this is something I've recently gotten hip to. It's just a general medical thing. If you are asking for something and a doctor is trying to either talk you out of it, whether it be a test, a second opinion, a referral, whatever it is, if they are trying to talk you out of it or they look like they're not going to do whatever you're asking for, you need to say to them, please write this refusal in my chart.
Right.
Please write on my chart that you are refusing me this fill in the blank, this blood test, this referral, this information, this whatever. Write it, document it in my chart that you are refusing this service. And I guarantee you they will give you what you want because they do not want to write that. And if they do, now you have record.
Yes.
So that's another thing I've just noticed in general, for your own health, whatever. So you were always this very specific advocate. When you would go with your mother and they would take blood, you would be, don't take that much blood. You're like, she has a blood disease. Don't take all of her blood. Stop it.
Well, don't take her immune system.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
What
like,
happens.
they're taking so much blood every time
Yes.
she's going in all the time. And she's not her body's not working in a full capacity. So she's not regenerating the blood at the level that someone who is not fighting a major disease would be doing.
Absolutely.
And they let you do that.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, she had rolling veins. Until she got a port, it was very different. It was hard because she finally got a port, but she had rolling veins and somebody made her cry once. And so I became like psycho about it. Hi, if you're not good at this, don't do it.
Right. Give me someone who is.
Give me the best person you have to draw her blood because I'm going to tell you right now, it will not be pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Do not do this. Do not hurt her. And in this tone was what I used. I was very clear because you made my mother cry. Somebody made my mother cry once. And after that, because I felt like shit that I didn't like stop them sooner. So I never let it happen again. She was my everything. And so, they didn't see what I saw. They didn't, my siblings don't even know the stuff I saw. Like there are things that happened that nobody knows about. And she blew up at one point. She just gained so much weight. My mother was always a slender woman. And we went to the outlet. She was in a wheelchair. We went from the cane to the walker to the wheelchair, back to the walker to a cane. I mean, like because of her weight. Like I slept in the room closest to her bathroom, the wall. We shared the bathroom. She would just knock on sometimes she didn't even need to knock. She was just like, Tara, because she couldn't get off the toilet. She was so heavy. She was not used to this.
Right.
This is a woman who she was almost 200 pounds. So I would have to go lift her so that she could get back into bed. Or she needed to go to the bathroom, she would call me. Or like I slept with one ear open for so long that it's taken forever to get back to a sleep rhythm.
Yes.
Because I just was listening for her all the time.
Yes. My mom went through something similar because she would have to help my dad up to go to the restroom in the middle of the night. And as he started having bladder problems, that was every couple hours, and she's listening for him the minute because my dad's brain thing, he was nonverbal. So he couldn't say like, help me, I'm awake. So he couldn't say that. And then on top of that, there was something about his particular brain problem where he would think that he could still do certain things, which I think isn't actually even indicative of his brain thing. I think it's as we age, we forget that like we might not be able to do all the things that we once were able to. Right. And I think a lot of people who are dealing with any kind of degeneration physically might deal with this because he was still trying to lean over and like pick up a piece of lint off the floor, which is something he did in his wellness all the time. He was always like, see something on the floor and pick it up. And he would try to do that with a walker. And we're like, bro, hello, like you're on a walker. It's not time to pick up lint off and he would fall, and so him getting out of bed, like my mom would have to help him. So she was sleeping with one ear open and getting up multiple times a night for years. And I was wondering how quickly that would go away from her, go away for her if she'd be able to kick back in or not. And I haven't checked in with her specifically about that recently, but I know exactly kind of, I can imagine.
It takes a minute for you to like, just have a sense of, I don't have to go do that. Yeah. But everywhere I drive, like that's part of the grief. Like I drive and there are times I want to leave California, but then I realize that there is not a safer place than for women than California. So then I
Right.
have to stay.
Right. Right. You have to
Um,
stay. Yes.
exactly. Um, but part of the, like parts of town, like, driving her to the doctor enough times, driving her to the hospital, like all of that stuff has been so hard has been part of the process. Like, I
Right.
don't think you think, that that's part of it. Like, that this hospital represents just so
Right.
much pain, but
The haunting of that, of like these
yeah,
areas that weren't happy memories.
right,
They're like memories of your mom, but they weren't great. They're like, this is where things didn't go well. Yeah.
right. Well, and I was very fortunate because I mean, I ended up going back to the hospital at the end of the year when our friend's brother-in-law was dying.
Mm,
And I went to the hospital, and I am so grateful for how united my family is. But these people were like just at each other, and I'm like, I had to
right.
stop them. I'm like, y'all don't know me from anybody, but right now, this is not helping.
Right.
I got a kumbaya circle happening in this waiting room with
Right.
these
Right.
people. I'm like, y'all need to pray.
Y'all need Jesus, and I don't even believe in Jesus.
Right. I'm like, the Buddhist is telling y'all to grab hands.
Right.
And we grabbed hands, and they were so grateful because I'm like, he's dying. And this is
Right.
how you're going to do this?
Yeah.
You're not supporting his wife. I mean, like, it was just like a whole thing. But but I was able to go back to that hospital, but at that moment, because it wasn't about me.
Right.
It was
Right.
like, how can I help? And then so even the week before my mom died, the doctor said, she had to have this test. And so I had to drive out to Westlake. It was the only place that was going to let this test happen. So for those of you who are not familiar with California, Westlake is not close,
Mm-hmm.
but it was the closest I had to get her to get this test done. And as they take her back from this test, this woman is sitting there, and I end up having this conversation with this woman whose mom has been in a vegetative state for 8 years because the daughter that she put in charge wouldn't pull the trigger. Can you imagine that your mom is on life support for 8 years? And this was the daughter. And she said, my sister, she goes, I had to choose whether I was going to lose my sister too, because we were fighting about it so much. It was so many lessons. Like the universe was like, hi, don't let this happen. And,
Right.
like when there was a shot, my mother did not want to be hooked up. We were
Mm-hmm.
very clear on what she wanted. She didn't want to be hooked up to us, because another friend of ours had like 16 machines when we
Mm.
went to see her. 16. And my mother, as we're leaving, do not let
Right.
that happen to
Right.
me. We're like, got it, done.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the midst of all of this, we were so united. I said to my family, the surgeon, that everybody had been working all day on her, and they said, we found a hospital that will do it. We found a surgeon that will do the surgery. We found that what she needs. It was an Impala. It
Mm-hmm.
was something to make her heart beat, help her heart, that would pump the blood for her so her heart could rest,
Mm-hmm.
and heal. And so I looked at them and I said, we have to do it, because there will be nothing worse. I mean, like, what if it works?
Right.
So we have to.
Right.
And so she went and we drove to Thousand Oaks. Now we transferred her. It was amazing. Just to, and I remember in that hospital 4 different times. I don't think you were one of those calls. I went and I found a spot that I could get on the phone, and I fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
I cried so hard. I fell apart 4 different times, and then I come out and I'm like, okay, like, to be there for my family. But there were 4 phone calls that I remember making, just
Mm-hmm.
sobbing. I can't lose her, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just sobbing. And then I pull it together.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the start of that week. It was a week to the day she died. We moved to Thousand Oaks, and then I called and I just said, I looked at the surgeon and I said, if you take her off that machine, how long will she live? And he said, maybe 15 minutes. I said, okay, we're done. And I
Mm-hmm.
went to her and I said, are you done? And she said, yes. She shook her head, yes. I hadn't
Mm-hmm.
heard her voice again. She'd been intubated for a week.
Mm.
That was painful.
Yep.
And before they took her for the first to find out what was wrong, that morning they came to the ICU and they took the bed, they took her, and like all night long, we'd been running tests all night long. I could see the nurse. He looked scared. I'm like, you need to work on your face.
Right. You're like, this
I
is
need
your
you,
profession. I need you to
right.
be
I
more
need you.
professional.
You are not helping a sister out. Like, I'm like,
Show me calm, cool, and collected. There are
right.
two places, on a plane and in a hospital. I need
I
you
need you
to.
to. And so anyway, I got into the operating room before they did the big surgery, and the nurse looked at me as we're walking. She said, "This is amazing." I'm like, "What?" She said, "He never lets anyone in his emergency room. I mean, in his
Mm.
operating room." I said, "Yeah." He could tell there was no option
Ooh.
that
Mhm.
I was going in. My mother, like first he said her heart stopped at one point. She coded. My
Mhm.
knees buckled.
Mhm.
And my dad happened to be there because I'd called him and asked him to bring me some stuff to the hospital, not knowing that this is the road we were going down. And I went in and I chanted in her ear, and I wanted them to hear me chant, and I wanted them to hear how much I loved her, and I wanted them to be really clear that I wanted them to do every fucking thing they could to make sure she was okay.
Right.
And so the nurse was like in shock that he was letting me in, but my everything in my life said, this is not going to happen without me seeing her.
Right.
I need her to know that I'm here. I need her to know I love her. I need her to know we
Mhm.
got you, because she was
Mhm.
scared.
Yeah.
She needed to see it. It had been just, if I could, I said, I've stopped saying it for a long time. The pain specialist that took over while she was in the hospital was a piece of shit.
Mm.
And I said, if I met that person in a dark alley, I'd forget I was Buddhist. I have stopped
Right.
saying that. It's not a good cause, so I stopped
Well,
saying it. But
you know how
anyway,
I feel about it. You might
I
be
know.
someone's karma.
And there you have it. So, but I don't need to make any more negative causes on top of
Yes.
my,
Got it. Yes.
So anyway, it that week was the hardest week. And I will say that, she died on a Thursday. I did not teach. And on Friday, we went to her doctor's. We bought baskets, we bought fruit, we bought stuff to thank the people that had
Mhm.
cared for her for so long.
Mhm.
And they thanked us because they said, no, we never know what happens. People
Right.
just stop coming in, or they've died and we don't know what happened. So they thanked us. So we went to each doctor, her primary care, her oncologist. We went to these people and thanked them for caring for her and letting them know what happened to her.
Mhm.
And they were so appreciative. And then I remember teaching on Monday. She died on Thursday, and I was back at
Mhm.
school on Monday.
Mhm.
And because I wanted the kids to see that
Right.
death is natural. This is
Right.
what happens. They've been with me through this whole process.
Right.
They've been watching me care for her. They've heard me talk about it. I wanted them to see you can survive this.
Yeah.
Now they didn't see some other stuff
Right. Right.
where I fucking fell apart.
Right.
Have we gone on too long?
I, no, I'll stop you. Don't worry.
Okay.
I'm so glad that your family was united. My family was also very united. My family was
Yeah.
very small because it was just me, my brother, and my mom making all these decisions and doing this. But we were also really united, which I was really grateful for. And I didn't know how it was going to be because I didn't know if I would have a different feeling about things than they would when they were basically told that, hey, we can put a feeding tube in. It won't necessarily prolong his life, but, he can't eat food anymore normally. You were my first call because I was like, Tara, I'm pretty sure this is not a good choice, but I want to hear your experience. And you were like, don't do it. And I was like, thank you for validating that. And I don't even know if I called anybody else. And I just went back to my family and I was like, look, I've talked to people who have been through this. This is not the road. I think if we can avoid doing that. And they were happy to take that information and be like, absolutely. Okay. Like, it was just so helpful to have someone who had been through it. And I want to go back, way back to something you had talked about. And just a little note. a little experience driven note for any of the listeners who this might be helpful for. When you talked about advocating for your mom and her pain threshold, and when people weren't good at doing certain things, you were really loud about, hey, if this is not your specialty, like find someone else. Like if you're not good at doing this with this scenario, like get someone else who can. I have found that ever since I start telling people that I'm extremely sensitive, like I went in, I had a mammogram recently for no other reason, just that I'm of the age that I need to be doing that. And the lady, she was very nice. She was lovely. She was like, it's going to be uncomfortable, this and that. And I was like, okay, well, I just want to let you know I'm really sensitive. I'm really highly sensitive to pain. And she was like, okay. And every time I have done this, like dentist, doctor, whatever, they go above and beyond and they're checking in, which they would never do if I did, because for a long time, I never said anything.
Right.
And I don't know if I am more sensitive to pain or not, but I certainly want them to know so that they're checking in. And that's fine for me to say. And as a white lady, people are going to listen to me. Now, as a woman of color or a man of color, we all know that there is documentation that says that there are still medical professionals who believe that people of color have a higher pain threshold and a higher pain tolerance than people who don't. So I want to say that so that regardless of what color you are, especially if you are a person of color, brown, black, not white, you may have to advocate triple for yourself. And even then, who knows? I can't say, but go in saying I'm the most sensitive person, everything, I splinter and I'm going to cry, because at least then there might be the opportunity for them to take that into, oh, this is a person who has pain tolerance. Okay, well, I don't want to make them cry. I don't want to make them make noise. I don't want to I think most people who work in these systems are not sadistic. There might be a few, and I hope you don't get them. But I think if you can start advocating for yourself, even if you don't think you're someone who has a low threshold for pain, maybe just start saying it, because I think the care just might be different. And I think you demanding that for your mother made all the difference in probably how much pain, on top of pain, right? There's pain you're not going to be able to take away, but then there's pain that you might be able to circumvent and make less by just being, loud about it, or not even loud, but just bringing it up, hey,
I have to tell you, that night was really awful. And she was crying. She was screaming out in pain. And so I kept her pain meds on me. I gave her one of the pain meds. That was the only way to calm her down. Mm-hmm. And I went out to the desk and I said, I don't know who the fuck this person is, but I want them off of our service now. Mm. I said, and I need you to know, I gave her pain medication so you know what's in her body. Mm-hmm. I gave her our own pain meds that she normally has. Mm-hmm. And even in that moment, I wasn't, because I don't know, I wish I had gone back to our regular pain specialist. And he worked out of that hospital, but for some reason he wasn't on our service when this surgery took place. And she called me, and I had gone home to get some sleep. This was the one time I went home to get some sleep. Everybody's at the hospital. I said, I just need to get some sleep. And they called me. And I said, my dad is there. I said, but Dr. Gary is our pain specialist. Please call him and ask what she's on. I don't want to tell you wrong from my lack of sleep. I'm exhausted. And so I'm thinking she's called. And Dr. Gary said to me, I found this out. I was like, what Jessica, whatever her name is, I was looking stuff up. I was trying to, after the fact, that she yelled at him. This pain, the woman, the doctor yelled at my pain specialist and hung up the phone on him. I found this out after the fact because I was trying to dig into what happened to my mother. I went and got her records. I went and got everything. I wanted everybody's name that had been on her service and especially this person, because I needed to know, do we need to sue y'all? Do we need to do something? Because it was awful, because she had decided that she had been on too many pain meds for too long. And yeah, I'm like, she's got bone, blood cancer. It's, So anyway, that was an awful night. But the nursing staff had my back. But I was like, I need you to know that I gave her my own pain meds, but I'm nervous about that.
Right.
Because I'm not, she just had surgery. I'm not a doctor, but I knew my mother was screaming in pain, like literally screaming.
Yeah.
And it hurt me to my core. So I just popped a pill in her mouth and she calmed down. That night was a lot. And that was the beginning of the end. But I think that my mother would not have done well through COVID.
That would have been really hard.
It would have been really difficult. Nobody had been able to come to this house, number one.
Right.
Number two, when she went to the hospital, they would have been arresting me.
Yeah, because you would have gone in with her and they wouldn't have allowed,
And then I found out later that people were allowing people in with some patients.
Right.
But anyway, but I would have been that girl. I'd have just been, oh, I'm not leaving her alone. You don't seem to understand. So when you look back, you go, well, I'm grateful for that.
Right. You didn't have that cross to bear in addition to everything else.
On top of everything else. Right. Exactly. So, just hindsight, the pain of losing her, the matriarch of our family, this woman, in the midst of all this, was in touch with people on Facebook that we had no idea she was in touch with. Auntie, we love you. Like, one of my uncles has a lot of kids, bless his heart. And she was in touch with all of them on Facebook. This is what she did. She still held the family together as she was. So when people say, oh, you did so much, I didn't do anything. I did what was the right thing to do for this amazing human being, for this person that I happened to get to call mom. I would have given limbs for her. I'd have given her my heart if it would have made a difference. There was one time when we were discussing self-induced, going, I don't want to say killing yourself, when you
euthanasia.
Die.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yes.
Like, taking
assisted.
Thank you.
Yeah, assisted suicide or whatever they call it. It's euthanasia.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, but we were in the hospital that day, and I remember just running from the room and just crumpling down a wall and just crying because I was so not ready for this conversation. I was not ready for her to go. And that was a couple of years, but she knew she wasn't getting better. And so it was just watching that so the grieving started as we get to the topic. The grieving started long before that. The grieving was all along because I knew she wasn't really getting better because I was with her every day. So it's nothing worse than watching your mom die a little bit at a time every day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
But we had fun. I did, but there were things that she stopped doing. Like we used to decorate together, or when
she couldn't do it anymore.
I had an Oscar party for her, and we dressed up in our gowns.
Right.
And I bought a red carpet, and we had food, and I just did things to make memories. And this is what I will say to people: if you have someone dying or if you have someone sick, videotape as much as you can. You didn't have that back in the day, day, when her mom died. But I videotaped her when she'd be practicing on the piano. I have that forever. I have moments forever that, us in the car singing, acting silly. I found so many moments, me being a Laker girl for her. She goes, oh, look, my own personal Laker girl. I have her voice. I have her talking to me, which makes me so happy. Like, I would tell people, it helps you to have something to go back and listen to or look at and smile and know that you had fun at some point in time through all of this. There was good times that still got to be had, even though it was really tough. And, she was a warrior. That's what I called her.
Yeah.
And because she was in pain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right.
If there could be more, that was it.
And I don't know about the rest of you, but I doesn't take much of a pain and inconvenience for me to want to leave this earth like within seconds. So like one migraine and I'm like, this is it. Like I cannot tolerate this for 5 more minutes. Like I'm like, it takes very little for me to be uncomfortable to the point where I'm like, I can't tolerate this. Like, so
Right.
yeah, I can't imagine. Like I really can't. I really can't imagine how long she, did it for. And I remember her coming to shows and coming to see, the SGI events that I would perform at or the shows that we were doing or the PAC shows. And like she was at every one of them, so she was doing it. She was doing it until she really couldn't do it anymore.
And
Um,
sweet and sweet.
yes. Oh, yes.
She would get testy every now and then, but she
Hmm.
had every right to get because
Yeah.
I don't know, when you're hurting, you're just
Yeah.
irritated.
Yeah.
She
No.
she fought that.
Yeah, she did.
She fought that, but I will say, not but without this Buddhism, without Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, I'm
Hmm.
promising you, we chanted a lot together. We chanted a lot for her, and there would be times that she just would just start chanting because she just could, she was just in pain or what,
Hmm.
and you're funny because you say, you migraine, I'm done. My baby sister, Robin,
Hmm. Hmm.
mom's in pain. Do we need to call 911? Like immediately.
I
And I'm
relate
like,
to that. I relate to
right.
that.
I'm like, no, we waited too long to take her pain meds
Hmm.
because she was worried about getting addicted. So she
Right.
would wait. And I'm like, the pain specialist has said this is not your case. And so once you get behind pain, it takes so much to
Right.
get
Yes. Got to get
in
ahead of
front of
pain.
it again.
You've got to get ahead of pain.
You got to stay ahead of pain. And she
Yeah.
would, every now and then she would and my mother was not a quiet pain person.
Hmm.
She moaned loudly.
Hmm.
She cried.
Right.
And I knew when she was septic. I mean, she would be delusional. Like I came in the hospital one time. I was like, "What's wrong with her?" I just checked her. She's burning up. The nurse is like, "I just checked." I know what she sounds like because I've been with her. I know
Right.
how. I had to call paramedics one time.
Yeah.
Like these big old firefighters in the bedroom, and like my mother is seeing, her mother at the end of the bed. She's yelling at her like, I don't want to go, make her go away. I'm like, okay, hold on, Grandma,
like,
I
it's
need
time.
you to leave. Right, Grandma, I need you to leave. And I'm like, call my uncle, I need you to come get the kids. I have my niece
Right.
and nephew. Please come get them. Auntie Terry's going to send you to McDonald's. Everybody knows me. You ain't going to McDonald's on my watch. I sent them to McDonald's. I was like,
Right.
let's
You
go.
were hard up. Right.
I had everything down to a science. Like I'm good in crisis. That's my saving grace is that
Yes,
I'm
you
good
are.
in crisis.
You are. Yes.
So, but I don't know how much time we have left.
I have 2 questions for you left.
Okay, because I have one story that I want to tell you that makes this whole grieving process have a really.
Let's hear it. Let her rip.
Let her rip. Could you have 2 questions? What are your 2 questions?
Well, you might be telling a story that is one of the questions. So.
Okay. All right. So, anyway, a couple of weeks ago, I went on vacation, as you talked about.
So bitterly knew
Yes.
about. Yeah.
San Miguel de Allende. If anybody wants to go to Mexico, that is the place to go. But anyway, during COVID, my passport expired. My 4th passport expired. So anyway, it's a nightmare to get it to happen, right? And
it's really bad right now too. I guess everything's really backed up.
And it's summer, so everybody's trying to travel, and so I finally got an appointment through a really odd way. I wrote my congressman. So anyway, so I got my appointment, 8:30 in the morning, the day before I have to leave. Anyway, it's a long, even when I get there at 7:45 because I don't, 8:30, I want to make sure that the line is already a million lines, people deep. I get in there. It's a nightmare from beginning to end, but they're so kind. Because Karen helped me, my neighbor, she's a postal worker. She made me feel like a white lady for like 30 minutes. It was beautiful. That's a whole nother story we'll have to tell. Anyway, they say, okay, you're gonna get your passport. Come back between 1:30 and 3 to get it. I'm cutting through a lot of stuff right now.
Right.
So I go pick up my uncle from the airport because he's flown in, pick him up from Flyway, take him home, go eat something because I've not eaten. It took 4 hours for all of that to happen. I'm on my way back to get my passport. I get a phone call and somebody says, Terry. And I'm like, yeah, I look and it's like, it's the passport office. I'm like, oh, shoot. Hello. All right, Terry. I'm like, yes. You didn't fill out a piece of paper properly, so we can't finish your passport until you do.
Yeah.
She said, don't panic. We can still get it done. I just need you to get here and not wait in line.
You're like, no problem. I have no problem not waiting in line.
Right. Tell them Wendy or what her name is, like, that I said to come through. So security is total dick to me at this point. They're being really mean, but they finally let me in. He's like, I don't know who that is. Do you have a receipt? Da, da, da. I get in there. Nobody knows who this woman is. Nobody knows who she is.
She doesn't exist.
I give my paperwork to someone, and she's like, I've given it to her. She'll make sure it's taken care of. So they give me the paperwork. I fill it out, and then you have to fill everything all over again. Not just that section. You have to fill the entire thing over again. This is like the 4th time I've done it that day. So I stamped the thing up there, like, to the window. Is this good? She's like, yes, just sign it. I'm like, great. So I go sit down. I get my passport. I go to my niece's graduation. I leave the next day, San Miguel. I'm in San Miguel, and it's hot as heck. But we're in this little store. We're walking to this place called the Aurora. Sounds beautiful, right? So we're walking this store. I'm in this store, and this woman walks. So back up. So while I'm in San Miguel, I asked my mother to visit me. Now, mind you,
like in your head, like a prayer in your head.
No, I say out loud, Mommy, I need you to visit me. Okay. And sometimes in my head I say, I say it out loud, Mom, I want you to visit me. And like a week or so before, the song came on, and I'm crying in the car, and I'm missing you so fucking much. I'm like, the stupid song, and that's what I said out loud. And so I asked her to visit me. So she visits me. But in my dream, we're at a funeral. And I'm like, this girl that I used to teach a million years ago, I'm like, is she dead? So anyway, the next morning I say, Ma, thanks for visiting, but can you make it a little more fun? That was not fun. So I'm in the store the next day. This woman walks into the store, and she looks just like my mother. My heart goes into my throat. And my friend Eva, who was in the room when my mother died as well, said my heart went into my throat. She saw the same thing I saw. I'm like, get that. So I'm like, oh my God, you look like my mom. And I show her my screen on my phone is my mom's picture. And she's like, oh my gosh. And so we have this moment. She goes on, and I'm like tripping, right? I'm like, well, I did ask my mom to visit. So I get to the Aurora, and our friend Carol has been talking to this woman's husband. And Eva says, did you get their names? And she said, yes. She said, did you tell Terry? He's like, no. Terry, go ask the woman her name. I said, okay, so I'm told to ask. She goes, no. I said, yeah. I said, what's your name? She said, Sandra.
No.
Yeah. I said, no. She said, yes. She goes, oh my God. I said, yes, that's her name, Sandra.
What?
Then it gets better. She's married to a white man. So
Stop it.
Mom, right? Yeah. She's married to a white man. The exact same years that my parents are married.
What?
And I'm like in tears, and she's like, I'm going to cry. And I said, my dad loved my mother, like his entire goal in life, his being was to make my mother happy. And she said, that's how he is with me. I wish I could show you this picture. I can show you the picture, but anyway, she looked like I have it. We took a picture together. And I told my family like flipped out when they saw this picture.
Right.
And I said, okay, Ma, you win. Thank you. But here's the thing. My mother started this trip with me. That call, my name is Terrence. When this woman called me, she called me Terry.
Yeah, all of your professional stuff is always Terrence.
My passport says Terrence.
Yeah, all of your stuff.
So this woman calls me and says Terry, and no one knows who she is. I promise you. Yeah. I'm like, that was my mama. I don't care what nobody says.
Right.
And then this woman, but what happened was, like, I had cried a couple of times. like after this, and it was like this cleansing cry. And I came home, and I don't want to say healed, but healed
Mm-hmm.
in a way that I never thought possible. I never thought that this hole, this deep, 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 dark hole that was in my heart, in my stomach, in my being, was ever going to heal, was ever going to filled again.
Mm-hmm.
And I was ready to just be sad about, because somebody said to me, why can't you just be both? Why can't you be happy and sad at the same time? I'm like, oh, you're right. And I said, okay. So I was ready to be that person. And I can't tell you how light I feel.
Mm.
And I mean light, like lighter than I've felt in the last 5 years. I never thought it was possible. I was ready to just be an aggrieved daughter.
To just have that hole
To have
that
that
just is
grief
there. Yeah.
that was just there. And my mother was not.
Mm.
I'm really clear about that. My mother was not, because that's not who she was.
Right.
She was a very forgiving human being, but that's not who she was either.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been hard these past 5 years to put my life back together, to put me back together. It has definitely been challenging and tiring. My ADHD, which she happily gave to me, like along with my depression, really hampered my ability to move forward. And I finally feel like I have a life I can carve out again.
Mm-hmm.
The grief has been all consuming, even through my smiles.
Right. Right.
Because in the back was this, I miss her so much. I miss my friend so much. I want to tell her everything. Well, you know what? I do.
Right.
I tell her.
Right.
And so I said, you asked your mom to visit you? I'm like, yeah. Because in Buddhism, we believe, energy doesn't die. This being dies. Her body was tired. It had already been through so much.
Right.
So much. But that energy, I'm still connected to her. I know that. But I had to stop saying, I hate living without her.
Right.
I had to stop saying that. And I know that.
Yeah.
Because I hated being here without her.
Right.
Somebody said, are you sad you didn't have kids? I said, what made me saddest is that I wanted kids so that they could meet my mom.
Right. Right. I remember you saying that.
That's really how I felt.
Yeah.
I didn't need to have, maybe I wanted kids, but I really wanted kids to know my mother, because all the grandkids and the great grands love her so much.
Yeah.
So I didn't expect. So when you asked me to do this,
yeah,
I found it so ironic. And that and that I'm coming to you with grief that's not palatable anymore.
This is what I want. This is the dream, right? Anyone who's listening to the podcast, I'm assuming, is seeking out this season. I would love for people just to listen to it, to have for their own journey, for what's coming, because no one's going to escape grief. But I'm assuming that people are going to be tapping in who need the resource. And I think it's a beacon of hope for anyone who's suffering, that there is hope. You can feel better. This will, things won't always be like this. When you had to change your mantra of, I hate living here without her, like there's a mantra I've been saying to myself that I got from kind of like a funny self-help thing that I was listening to kind of like take my mind off things. And it was, I want to see this differently. Help me to see this differently. Like whatever it is, I want to see this differently. Help me to see this differently.
Right.
And so, and actually, I'm glad you told that story, because the question was, do you have any unexplained mystical or magical experiences that have accompanied your journey? And I know you have more than one. And I have
Yes.
one of your mother, that I had a dream about your mother saying, tell them I've told you this one before. Like, she was
Yeah.
wearing red, which I that color to me is her, based on the little apron I wore for the show that we did for her. Like, her color to me, I thought I saw her driving around after she had passed in a red car. Like, like red for some reason to me is her. And she was wearing this like gorgeous big red, like just puffy, like just royal dress. And she was sitting behind a table and she was laughing. And I was like, oh my God, how are you? And she's like laughing. She's like, tell them I'm fine. And she meant you and your sisters and, your dad. Like,
Yeah.
just she was like, so like, she thought it was hilarious. She's like, tell them I'm fine. Like, it's
Yes.
no big deal. So yeah, I'm sure there's even more of those. I have one last question for you.
Okay.
So, in the podcast, and I'm trying to not give people advice, especially unsolicited, but do you have a suggestion for anybody who might be suffering right now? Like a quick little suggestion, like just even if it's just anything.
Here's what I'll say. And I think I said it earlier too, I went to therapy because I couldn't do it alone anymore.
Yep.
I couldn't manage my grief. And I was very fortunate that he had been my mother's therapist as well. So he really knew her. And
that's nice. There's a ton of backstory you didn't have to give them. You could cut right to the chase.
I was very fortunate. And I'd gone with her and him a couple of times. But anyway, and I think to be okay, like my friend said, to be okay, not being okay, in one side of you, and then the other side of you, it's okay to laugh. It's okay to be happy, and try and find those moments. Mm-hmm. I have done things to celebrate her. I celebrate her birthday every year. I go to dinner or what. I do something that makes me connect. But I really do believe, like you said, like my mother is okay. Mm-hmm. My mother, what I wanted for her, but this was her journey. This was her journey, and there are things she took on, karmic family-wise, that I don't have to take on. Thank you, Mommy. That I what I didn't know was that I couldn't save her. I never could. That was not my function. And but I could do this journey with her. And we did it together. Since she was 15 years old, I came to her, and here we are. I was 53 when she died. Mm-hmm. I look really great for my age. Anyway.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. If anyone ever seen you. Woo.
Right? So anyway, like I know that wasn't short and quick, but I'm just there's no right or wrong. There's no like this is the only way to get through this. Mm-hmm. And it's everybody's grief is individual, and it doesn't have to be over in a day. Screw those people that say it does. You do your journey. But there were times I really said, what is my lesson here? Mm. What am I trying? I need to grow from this. I need to grow from this. I want to, because this hurts too much.
Yeah. I think that's a great answer. Of the therapy, I think, is it's something someone hasn't said yet on the podcast.
Well, I know everybody
at this point
spiritually, I relied on my spiritual.
Yes, but nobody has said like, hey, go talk to someone alluded to it a little bit, like that was part of their process. Right. But I think, yes, like get a team, and not everyone in around you is going to be properly suited to help you through grief, unfortunately.
And there are people, this is what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're like, even like We Spark, they have grief groups. Yep. There are groups, like my dad went to one,
That's great.
So
I'll put some links.
Tell him he could date, but we're going to check him out real good beforehand.
Yeah. Well, can we talk about dusty old dudes already trying to pick up on my mom? Okay.
I know.
We won't get into it.
Okay.
It's like 2 months. They barely let the dust settle, and they were like.
No, my dad's best friend. It hadn't been 2 months. He said, like, until he saw us together. He was worried about him.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Until he saw us together.
Uh-huh.
You know, we went to visit him when we went to DC, when we went to the wedding. Until he saw us together, that he stopped trying to set him up. From that moment, he saw how cared for he was and how loved he was. And then he was like, okay, I'm good.
Right.
I don't know why everybody thinks that we want to just, I try to take care of you.
Right.
Why men, like, okay, never, that's
whole other pod. But yes. We'll end on the note, you know, therapy is a great resource. I'll put some therapy links in the show notes. And as always, I'm going to have some resources to grief resources and stuff like that. But I love what you said about, you know, I'm not going to paraphrase this quite as eloquently, but to be okay with not being okay. And then also to be okay with being okay. Right. You know, like, and all of that can happen at once and it's complicated. Terrence, aka Terry Yates, thank you so much time for lending your valuable time here on the pod and your genius and your wisdom and your spirit. I mean, you're a diamond. You're a diamond. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad that I had you, honestly, there. I treasure you.
I'm so glad I was not equipped.
You were part of my journey. You made it. I was safe, though.
Okay.
And that's most important to me. I felt safe.
And we will see. I want to include your pod in the notes if you're ready to at least have it as like something that can be lingering in people's minds. Because Terry's a great speaker and I'm sure you've fallen in love with listening to her. So I'll put it in the show notes. It may not be finished yet, but there might be a episode that you could check out as like a teaser reel or something like that. So we have it. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tara.
Thanks, Julie.
Bye.
Bye.